Hello, hello, and welcome back to another installment of MSP Success Spotlight. I'm your host and moderator, Ryan Ruff, and this is the show where we bring to you extraordinary managed service providers that are doing some great work in the IT solutions space. We like to feature these managed service providers and gain a few different things like industry insights, and then, of course, those differentiating factors that really allow them to see success and really separate themselves from the rest of the pack. Today, we've got a great episode dialed up for you. Today, we're featuring Mr. Jason Kirkhart, the founder and CEO of Beetoobi IT Solutions. Now, Beetoobi is located out of the Southern Virginia, the South Boston, Virginia area, serving not only Virginia, but also the top part of North Carolina. We'll get into clients in a little bit, but they've got a unique focus. You know, Jason and his company, they work a lot with medical organizations. So this is something a little more different than what we've seen on this show. So I'm excited to get into this with Jason today about how he goes about working with medical organizations. Now, a few more notes about Jason before we go ahead and bring him on to start the conversation. He's going to be featured in the fall 2021 edition of the MSP Success Magazine, and he's also got an upcoming book. Really unique title here, and I'm excited about this one. Title, Preventative Medicine, what you can do now to safeguard your business, your patients, and your reputation from cyber criminals. So again, this book really catering towards the audience and client base that he serves in this medical field. So I'm excited to bring Jason on to get today's conversation going. Jason, how you doing today? Good to see you, man.
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you so much.
Jason, great to have you on the show. And to get our conversation rolling, I think a great place to start today would be to really have you just kind of give us that high level overview on yourself personally and professionally, and what really just led you into this business overall in the first place. And then, of course, you know, what led you down the road to Beetoobi IT Solutions.
Okay, sure. So, I worked in IT for my entire career after pursuing an education in information technology. I worked mostly in startups because it was exciting. I got to work around the time when the .com era was in full swing, and so a lot of exciting times, a lot of opportunity to make good money, and so that's where I started, and it was great because you get to learn so many different things. Everything's rapid fire the whole time, and it helped me to grow a lot quicker than I think I would have if I'd been pigeonholed in like a big corporation. So I did that for maybe 15 years, and then I moved to my wife's hometown where we decided to set up camp and raise our family. She had an opportunity to do what she loves here and give back to her community. And I knew there was a need to provide IT services that just weren't being fulfilled in the way that I envisioned it. So we moved down here, and within a year, I started up the business. And we just started trying to help IT companies to do a better job of running their organizations with technology and securing them. And back then, a lot of this security stuff wasn't as big of a concern. Like there was no ransomware, and so it was a whole different game. And it's evolved a lot, and it's kind of kept us on our toes. But so that's how we got to where we are today. Is just trying to fill a need in the community. And eventually, an opportunity to work with a lot of the medical practices popped up, and so now we have this area of focus that we're trying to specialize in with healthcare IT, and that's kind of us.
Very cool. And Jason, one thing that I love to chat about with a lot of our MSPs that come on this show are some of those early days. I mean, you are the founder and CEO of your company, so I'd love to hear, you know, from your thoughts, what some of those early days were like. Obviously, this is an industry that's very deeply rooted in client service. So what was it like forging some of those initial relationships and really building the company to the success story that it is today? What were some of those early days like?
Good question. I think it's a challenge. It was a challenge because for me, I was new to the community. I had no relationships with anybody except my wife and the few people I knew through her family. So breaking that ice was a challenge. It took several years to really get to a point where I could walk in a room, and if anybody knew me at all, it wasn't just because I was my wife's husband, you know. So um, yeah, it's a challenge to build a reputation from nothing, and a lot of it has to do with just doing well by every single encounter that you have with the customer, so that they feel compelled to share that information with the next person.
And Jason, one thing interesting about your story is that you guys kind of adapted to different, clients, different kind of business solutions over time as you grew. Talk to me a little bit about this idea of constantly adapting to change and really just being a go-getter, in every essence of the word.
Sure, sure. One of my first jobs was for a local industrial development authority, and years previously they had purchased a couple of very cool pieces of technology that had a virtual reality cave, like a 3D room, if you will, and they also had a telepresence, which is kind of like you and I communicating here, except it's a full boardroom that's engineered to um, have almost like a face-to-face experience with people anywhere on the planet. And so when I what they asked me to do was that telepresence was broken. It wasn't working at all, and they had been struggling for a year to get it working. And so yeah, I said, well, I've never looked at one of these before, but it's a computer at its heart. So give me a few days, and I'll get it figured out. And so they gave me 3 weeks, and I made some progress the first day, and then the second day they said, "How's it going?" I said, "Great." They said, "Good, you have a week." And luckily, I was able to get it figured out the next day, connecting with some vendors and doing a few other things. But so it's just always stuff like that. You're never in our field gonna always come across stuff you've seen before. So it's as much about skills and experience as is knowing where to go when you don't have the information. And so that's really translated well into every new customer that we've engaged with, because everybody's business is different, whether it's the accounting systems they use or the software that they use. It's all different. So yeah.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. Every client you work with, it's a custom tailored fit to solve their problem, whatever issue they may have. So thinking in this single, dimensional way, or siloing things in terms of your solutions, it's only going to land you one type of client. And you're only going to have one type of relationship with that one type of client. So you want to diversify your skill set in that way, and sometimes it means rolling up your shirt sleeves and really just kind of taking on that go-getter mentality. Well, here, Jason,
Yeah.
I also, you're one of the unique MSPs that we've had on this show in that you guys work a lot with medical organizations. So talk to me about that transition. Where along the line did you guys see the opportunity with medical organizations to work with them, and really what was the need that you were addressing for them?
Sure. So where it really picked up speed was when a local hospital system had been working with a bunch of private practices to provide them with access to their own internal IT resources, and to let them leverage their own medical record system, because it just made it more efficient, amongst other reasons, for them when working with the same patients. But that hospital was purchased, and eventually the larger organization decided it wasn't where they wanted to be anymore. So they gave those practices a year to find alternate arrangements. And so where I'd had a couple of medical clients, suddenly that doubled. And we had to take it even more seriously than we already were, to look at all the ways um, that these practices are really at risk from the bad guys, if you will. Every business is out there online these days, running the risk of a cyber attack, whether it be stealing data, uh, trying to convince you to pay them money either through like a ransomware or by trickery. And for the medical practices, they have the additional challenge that um, medical data is even more valuable to the bad guys
Sure.
and more regulated by the government. So whereas most businesses are going to be in trouble if they aren't taking care of their stuff to protect that customer data, medical practices can face much steeper penalties if they fail to do even the basics to secure all of this information that they have. So that's what we try and focus on, is helping them to economically take care of that stuff in a way that similar businesses would be able to do.
Sure, sure, and the stakes are high. You hit the nail on the head in terms of that medical data being a pretty sought after piece of data for for the bad guys. So two big themes that I want to hit on that we really try and encompass with everybody that we bring on the show. The first and foremost is that educational piece, because that's so important, in being proactive instead of reactive as an IT solutions and company. So in your work with medical organizations, talk to me a little bit about that educational process. Maybe it's working with the IT folks over at a medical organization, or even if it's just purely you guys educating the employees, the staff of a given hospital system, of a private medical practice. Talk to me a little bit about what those educational efforts look like and how you guys do that.
Okay, sure. So there's lots of different ways that we will reach out to our customer base and even the community to try and educate them. Um, Everything from weekly email tips that we'll send out is just a real brief, like, hey, think about this week, to annual, more immersive awareness training that goes through the gamut of these are all the different things that you might encounter on a daily basis, and this is what you should do to be aware of them and prevent anything negative from happening to the organization. So those are two big ways that we do outreach, but sometimes education is really just a face-to-face encounter. It could be a ticket someone submits about one problem, and then while we're on the phone with them, they ask a question that leads to 15 minutes of telling them something that they weren't aware about, whether it's this is a good way to better safeguard your passwords, or to come up with better passwords, or to keep your login secure by not reusing the same password. Keep hitting on password. It's a very common problem, but
Sure.
things like
Got it. Got it. So obviously that educational effort comes into play, and that's a big topic that we like to discuss on this show. But secondarily, it's the secret sauce. That's the other thing we like to hit, really, that differentiating factor that separates you guys from the rest of the pack out there. So I want to ask you, in your eyes, what makes B2B unique? What do you guys want people to know about your company? How do you guys separate yourselves from the other MSPs out there that may or may not be serving medical organizations?
sure. A lot of the times when we come into new customers or new opportunities, the impression that I get is that they don't really have much of a relationship with the IT provider they have. So whether it's, I'm hesitant to call because it's going to cost me a lot of money every time for a simple question to be answered, or I rarely hear from them because they never reach out to me, or they're very slow to respond, or they just want to rush through and give me an answer or give a fix and then move on, but not necessarily make sure that I'm comfortable with it or that the problem is really fixed for the long haul. So we're very much about having a strong relationship with the customers. They know us, they know the technicians, they know me. They also feel comfortable that we understand the problems and we understand the solutions, and we're putting things in place to constantly improve their situation. So that, I mean, those are the biggest things. The other would be, like you said, just focusing on medical requires us to pay attention to certain things that might not be as important, at least legally, for other organizations.
Certainly. So I appreciate you kind of giving us your 2 cents on that differentiating factor. But also, I want one thing I want to touch base on with you, because it is a relatively bigger element, especially within your work in medical organizations, is the idea of compliance. Talk to me about why you believe that compliance is so important in this day and age, and where you see kind of the future of compliance, moving forward, as technology evolves, as cybersecurity threats continue to evolve, so on and so forth.
Sure, sure. So, yeah, compliance is important for one thing because it's required by law. In the medical industry, they just if they don't follow it, it's like anything else. If you don't, if you speed, you might not get a ticket, but when you do, it's going to suck. If you get in a wreck, it's even worse. So the tickets are usually to discourage the behavior that causes bigger problems. And so that's very much the case with HIPAA compliance. Um, and so we just want to make sure it's really not, it's no more difficult in some ways from our perspective than buckling up, when you drive, or just staying closer to the speed limit. So we try and make compliance more accessible, and an affordable process. Now, where I see it going, um, there's a lot of, I mean, right now, companies like ours are under attack. Our vendors are under attack by from all these bad actors. So you might have heard of like SolarWinds being attacked or Kaseya being attacked. Um, and then it doesn't hit the national news as much, but some larger MSPs out there get attacked too, because really we hold the keys to a lot of kingdoms. So it's kind of a one-stop shop to nail
Right.
a bunch of stuff. So there's a lot of scuttlebutt in the industry. I think where we're trending is they're going to start regulating us more as an industry, and probably I would expect to see in the next 3 to 5 years that they're going to start asking us to start adopting like professional credentialing, like you would see in other professional industries, like
Hmm.
architects or lawyers or things like that. So it would not
Yeah.
surprise me in the least to see that happen.
Do you think that it's beneficial for everybody if they do go that route in the future?
I think it is. I mean, it gives you a level of confidence that right now, um, many MSPs try to overcome, because the last guy was such a jackleg and did things
Right.
so kind of half butt and whatever. So it automatically elevates the assumption of what you're getting. It doesn't mean that you're going to get it. I mean, doctors malpractice,
Sure.
engineers screw
Sure.
stuff up, but it elevates your confidence from the get go, so you can
Mhm.
focus on the solutions instead of the trust.
Right, right. That's a good point. So thanks for kind of giving your 2 cents on compliance as a whole, because obviously that pertains, significantly to you guys working out of the medical space in general. Um,
Sure.
One last thing I want to hit on before we kind of bring our conversation to a head here is obviously you guys have your core relationships with the foundational clients that have helped build your business to what it is today. Walk me through what a new client experience kind of would look like. If somebody was to, either give you a call to schedule, a session, or just to do that meeting, that onboarding or that discovery call,
Mhm.
online or in person. Walk me through just what that initial, point of contact looks like when bringing a new client on board for you guys.
Sure. So the way our process works today is we will have just a quick call with a customer to hit some highlights of what they have going on, as well as how we might be able to take next steps to work together. And usually it's 5 or 10 minutes, and the whole point is explain, if you were interested in learning more, we could come on site and do a deeper dive assessment of their network, their computer systems, just to get a better sense of how they stack up against industry best practices. Because while every solution is custom to that customer and what they have going on, there's definitely some components to every solution that's pretty standard, whether it be the perimeter firewall stuff or antivirus. There's all these different things that are part of the recipe, and then there's the
Hmm.
pieces that would be unique to them. And so the next step would be going through that discovery process and then having a follow-up meeting where we review findings and talk about the proposals of how we can remediate all those issues that they have. And if that sounds interesting to them, if they like what they hear about the solutions that we can provide, then the next step would be we have an onboarding meeting where we sort of kick off the relationship and collect the information we need to, schedule out, when we're going to roll out our software to the computer systems, collect any other information that hadn't popped up yet about problems that they may be experiencing that they want resolved, and then just sort of transition into more of a day-to-day operation of keeping them up and running.
I love that. A nice, thorough discovery process. Really, starting off on the right foot, getting everybody's ducks in a row when it comes to the different, avenues that you guys want to explore for a given entity. Because as you and I mentioned at the very beginning of this conversation, all of these relationships that you have with clients, they're custom tailored. There's not a one size fit all approach for you guys, especially when it comes to the medical field. So, Jason, for anybody that's listening, maybe it's somebody that's linked to the medical field themselves. Maybe they want to set up a call. Maybe they want to go through this process and just kick the conversation off and see where, whether or not B2B might be the right fit for their organization. How should somebody go about getting a hold of you and your team?
Sure. So the easiest way to start that process would be to go to our website, www.beetoobi.com/podcast. And that's beetoobi.com/podcast. One word. And on that page, you'll be able to fill out a few details, and then we'll reach out.
Fantastic. Well, Jason, I really appreciate it. Is there anything else you want to share with us before we say goodbye today, in terms of just your work in the medical space and, or even just IT solutions altogether?
Our goal is really just to make sure that no medical organizations in our area go without at least knowing what compliance might look like in terms of a solution that they can implement and feel good about and sleep sound at night. So I think so many of them avoid the problem, like, I don't know, or it's going to be crazy expensive or very difficult, and I don't even know if we could get it done. So we want to meet with these folks and at least get them that far so they can see, this isn't so terrible. I can see how we could get to there. And, at least then they're educated about it. They may still not choose to go forward, but, that's at least what we can do to try and help keep our area safe.
Yeah, and if anything, it's just starting that conversation, going to beetoobi.com/podcast, getting that initial kickoff call with you guys and just kind of get that conversation rolling. I feel like, given you guys your extensive experience in this space, I think you can obviously help shed some light on a lot of issues that may or may not exist, honestly, for a given medical organization. So, Jason, appreciate you and your time. Congratulations on you and your success so far with B2B Solutions, and I'm looking forward to maybe having you guys back on the show in a future episode.
That'd be great, Ryan. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
No problem. And hey, look, we want to take one last moment to thank you, our audience, for taking time out of your day to spend a moment with us. If you liked what you saw today, you liked what you heard, remember, like the content, feel free to comment, subscribe to the show, share this information with friends, family, business owners who you think might benefit from these conversations, because at the end of the day, these conversations are meant for you. We want to bring some great MSPs to your doorstep and really share some industry insights and, of course, what makes some of these MSPs so great. So for Mr. Jason Kirkhart of B2B IT Solutions, I'm Ryan Ruff saying so long, and we thank you so much for joining us on today's edition of MSP Success Spotlight.